Dear students, I am Dr. Sufyan Ahmad, working as Deputy Librarian in Jamia Millia Islamia, New Delhi. Today, I am going to discuss the topic zero based budgeting, which is a very important topic. As you know that every library needs some finance to operate and perform their activities. Keeping in view the importance and seriousness of these financial requirements, the librarians are involved in the preparation of budget making. There are various methods of budget making and zero based budgeting is one such methods. Now, let us see the history of zero based budgeting. The origin of zero based budgeting can be traced back to 1924 when the renowned budget authority Edward Hilton Young had emphasized the need for re-justification of annual budget programs. In 1962, the Department of Agriculture in USA made the first attempt to prepare a zero based budgeting under the budget director Mr. Bell, who suggested that each program should be justified from zero. Then the Secretary Orville Freeman decided to make his financial year 1963 and 1964 as zero based budget. Aaron Wildevsky and Arthur Hammond reviewed the incremental versus comprehensive budget after interviewing 57 persons in the Department of Agriculture, policy makers, managers, staff assistants and budget officers. They concluded that zero based budgeting consumed huge amount of time and energy, but produced very little of changes in the department's budget. Therefore, it was an additional exercise on top of the normal process of budgeting and hence it was unsuccessful. However, it was Peter A. Fair, who is also regarded as the father of zero based budgeting, who designed its logical framework and successfully implemented it in 1969 while working as a staff control manager in Texas Instruments in USA. In 1968, Fair reviewed a speech given by Dr. Arthur F. Burns proposing that all government agencies programs be reviewed in their entirety each year and claiming that substantial cost saving could be realized from the comprehensive review. Thus, Fair brought the concept of zero based budgeting in Texas Instruments to reduce the staff costs. Peter Fair was first involved in budgeting in the staff and research division of Texas Instruments in 1968. At that time, the staff was facing a budget decrease of 5%. They asked managers to identify what they would reduce if their budget would be cut by 10%, and then they chose the 5% reduction from the 10% identified reduction. Thus, the process was like asking the managers of organizational units to identify their lowest priority of activities and functions, that is, those activities which they would give up if they were forced to take say a 10 or 15% budget reduction. During this process, a series of meetings were held in the activity review, budget allocation and setting up of the priorities. At the end of this review process, they encountered three main problems, which were: number one, some goals and objectives were not established as understood and anticipated by the top management. In many cases, it was found that managers first established the budgets and then determined the objectives, making it like putting the cart before the horse. Number two, some operating decisions were not made which affected the amount of money budgeted. The company experienced a shortage of power for its the last division. To consider the possible alternatives in order to solve this problem, they identified 3 alternatives with associated cost and benefits of each alternative and selected the best alternatives. Number 3, it was found that budgeted dollars were not strictly allocated in accordance with the changing responsibilities and workloads. In these departments in which the responsibilities and workload had increased, they were receiving the same budget cuts. In the first year, a zero-based budget was implemented in staff and research divisions of Texas Instruments on experimental basis, which turned out successful. In the second year also, it was extended to other divisions. Thus, the new techniques of budgeting was developed as a means of reducing the cost of operations. This was done by ranking every single function within the company's duration and abolishing the duplicative functions. Fier outlined his experiences of zero-based budgeting by authoring a comprehensive article in Harvard Business Review in its issue of November-December 1970. With certain modifications, zero-based budgeting is still in use in Texas Instruments. The concept of zero-based budgeting soon caught up and became popular. When the governor of Georgia, Jimmy Carter, read about zero-based budgeting, he invited Fier to apply the approach to state of Georgia. Fier left Texas Instruments and became a consultant for the state of Georgia, where zero-based budgeting was applied to all 65 agency programs in the first year of 1974. In 1975, George Minimier examined Carter's zero-based budgeting efforts in Georgia. He conducted personal interviews with 13 Georgia's departmental heads and with Governor Carter and examined Georgia's executive budgets for fiscal year 1972, 73 and 74 respectively. He concluded that zero-based budgeting improved the quality of information available to the governor, to the departmental heads and budget analysts, and that zero-based budgeting had made an indirect contribution to reallocation of financial resources. But zero-based budgeting did not make a direct contribution to reallocation of the state financial resources. A modified version of the original zero-based budgeting system is still in use. Problems faced in the initial years have been greatly reduced. After winning the presidential election, Jimmy Carter brought the concept of zero-based into federal budgetary control systems. During his first year in the office, the use of zero-based budgeting was made mandatory for the government agencies by issuing an order on 14th February 1977. In his memo, he requested each agency to develop a zero-based budgeting system. President Carter claimed that an effective zero-based budgeting system will benefit the federal government in several ways. Since 1973, a dozen states and more than 36 municipalities have experimented zero-based budgeting or some components of the system with varied experience and impact. Among the states who have used zero-based budgeting includes California, Indiana, Missouri, Texas, Georgia, Montana, New Jersey, New Mexico, Virginia, etc. While in the private industry, more than 500 corporations have used it with a greater degree of success as compared to government agencies. Among them are Texas Instruments, Xerox Corporation, Ford Motors, etc. Many organizations are still using it while others have discontinued it. Let us see the Indian scene. The concept of zero-based budgeting has been in use in Indian private industry since long without calling it zero-based budgeting. For example, Britannica Industries Limited and Union Carbide have used it since the year 1977 and 78. However, in government context, it is of recent thinking. During early 80s, it appeared that Government of India had sent 3 administrators to United States with a view to study the system and recommend on the applications of zero-based budgeting in Indian conditions. But the implementation of zero-based budgeting perhaps could not materialize due to political considerations. While drawing up the plan document for the 7th 5-year plan, several alternatives and steps were recommended by the 8th Finance Commission and Planning Commission to the government to cut the wasteful public expenditure and inefficiencies in implementation of government programs. The use of zero-based budgeting to both non-development and development expenditure was one of the tools to be experimented. As a sequel, the former finance minister Mr. V.P. Singh, while presenting the budget for 1986-87 in the parliament, hinted that Government of India would be using zero-based budgeting from the next year, that is 1987-88. For this purpose, a committee under the chairmanship of Cabinet Secretary was formed. On 10th July 1986, the Ministry of Finance issued a circular cum zero-based budgeting guidelines to all ministries, departments, state governments and public sector undertakings, impressing the need for applying zero-based budgeting to all schemes and programs over rupees 1 crore outlay from the year 1987-88 fiscal year. For this purpose, a central monitoring cell was formed. The basic objectives of introducing zero-based budgeting in central and state government ministries and departments are to identify the wasteful expenditure and to help in the judicious allocation of scarce national resources. But the budget for 1987 and 88 presented in the parliament did not reflect a zero-based budget, despite the fact that the finance minister had identified around 150 redundant and low priority schemes with an estimated outlay over rupees 1000 crores on which the ministry wanted to X. A few departments like telecommunication and CSIR were in the process to complete the zero-based exercise. The then finance minister Mr. N.D. Tiwari had also shown a firm commitment for the effective implementation of zero-based budgeting in the central government ministries and departments. Among the state governments, Maharashtra state has been implementing zero-based budgeting with much seriousness in all 42 departments. The budget for 1988 and 89, which was presented in the assembly, has reflected a saving of rupees 50 crores during 1987 and 88. The budget for 1988 and 89 also proposes a saving of rupees 50 crores. Several redundant, duplicative and low priority schemes are either going to be eliminated or merged. Similarly, the Karnataka state's budget has estimated a savings of rupees 32 crores with several schemes and programs to be discontinued or merged. Gujarat government has also experimented zero-based in two departments, namely public health and agriculture, but the results were not encouraging because of the lack of proper understanding of the concept and methodology. The state government was planning to apply this concept to all 45 departments from the budget year 1988 and 89. Rajasthan has also implemented zero-based budgeting on experimental basis in 2-3 departments. Similarly, Andaman and Nicobar administration was also in the process to implement zero-based budgeting in a big way from 1988 and 89 budget year. However, in all these organizations, it was zero-based review and not zero-based budgeting, as the methodology had not been applied. Among the public sector undertakings, Maruti Udyog, AP State Road Transport Corporations, Cement Corporation of India, Neyveli Lignite Corporation, a few steel plants and nationalized banks were in the threshold to implement zero-based budgeting. In fact, zero-based budgeting is not a new or revolutionary concept, as every organization would have experienced this approach at least once in its lifetime, that is, when the organization prepared its first budget or when a reorganization or merger of the organization called for a fresh budget preparation. The budget base at that time was zero. Therefore, the central theme of the word zero is the act of preparing the budget from scratch by assuming that all schemes and activities are new and have to be justified afresh by evaluating them on the basis of cost benefit or some other analytical evaluation tools. Zero-based budgeting involves a comprehensive appraisal and re-evaluation of ongoing schemes or activities in terms of their performance, objectives, priorities, workload, manpower requirements, methods, resources, etc., etc. Now, let us see zero-based budgeting in libraries. So, zero-based budgeting is an operating, planning and budgeting tool that forces librarians to look into old files, see how the schemes and objectives were justified 5-10 years ago, make an in-depth review to see how the scene has changed since then and whether these schemes and activities justify their continuation. If yes, then the librarians estimate afresh the direct cost, indirect costs, workload, manpower requirements and searches for alternative cost effective methods to do these activities. All the information regarding an activity is documented in budget form, which is termed as decision packages. After the evaluation and systematic analysis, the decision packages are ranked on the basis of priorities. Those schemes and activities which are redundant, duplicative, low priority or of no value would get no place in the forthcoming budget, though these schemes and activities might have been an integral part of the past budget. During the scrutiny and evaluation process, zero-based budgeting raised some hard questions such as what are we spending now and what are we getting now for that expenditure, how much money asked for and why they are needed, where the money to be spent, what is the minimum level of activity that must be performed, can any of the present activities be abandoned without losing anything important, what are the alternative methods available with their cost and benefits, can we merge some activities with another and still perform those tasks efficiently, can we perform the planned task with less staff and resources, should we increase the expenditure in particular area or decrease them, what additional benefits will be achieved if additional funds are allocated to an activity. By raising these hard questions in the budget exercise, the final outcome of this highly structured and systematic analytical process may lead to number 1, complete elimination of certain redundant or low priority schemes with activities with no budget approval, that is budget is 0 for these activities. Number 2, funding certain schemes and activities at the reduced level or minimum level. Number 3, funding certain activities at the status quo or current level. Number 4, funding them at the improved levels. In other words, deciding which of these funding levels from 0 to a significant increase is appropriate for the different activities of the libraries. On the basis of these analyses, it emerges that zero-based budgeting is a resource allocation tool in the hands of management that provides a significant method for evaluating all operations and programs, current and new, allows for budget allocation and expansion in a rational manner and reallocation of resources from redundant and low priority programs to high priority programs. In its process, zero-based budgeting complements and allows the use of many currently accepted management techniques and thinking such as management by objectives, program analysis, cost benefit tools, performance budgeting, work measurement, etc. Now, let us discuss the objectives of zero-based budgeting in libraries. So, the principal objectives of implementing zero-based budgeting in libraries are number 1, reduction in total budget, number 2, rational allocation of resources, number 3, cost effectiveness, number 4, improved plans and decisions, number 5, links planning, budgeting and review process in a single process, keeping in view the Department of Expenditure, Ministry of Finance, Government of India highlighted the objectives of zero-based budgeting as zero-based budgeting requires identification and sharpening of objectives, examination of various alternative ways of achieving these objectives, selecting the best alternative through cost effectiveness analysis, priority of objectives and programs, switching of resources from programs with lower priority to those with higher priority, and identification and elimination of programs which have outlived their utility. The guidelines further states that the objectives is not just to cut expenditure, but to make public expenditure more cost effective and rationally justified by allocating the resources to various programs. Now, let us discuss the benefits of zero-based budgeting. So, there are a number of benefits that can be derived from zero based budgeting in any library, but the most immediate are improved plans and budget. In many libraries, as in any organization, the planning and budgeting is done by the financial or fiscal department, with only top management such as librarian or director participating in decisions making and formulation of budget. Zero based budgeting requires participation of management levels and the use of all the brain power in the library. There are some continuing benefits, such as librarians will start initiating a process for review during the year, as they will know what the process will be repeated each year. Besides, it is also possible to measure management against goals, performance and benefits of which they have committed themselves. Finally, the zero based budgeting helps to develop the management team. The librarian must identify and evaluate as well as justify all the library functions, not just those where he assumes increases or decreases should be made in current operations. This process promotes not only a better way to allocate resources, but is also defensible, as the librarian has carefully evaluated the need for each activity. Considering alternatives for accomplishing it, this method of budgeting also gives the librarian more flexibility in shifting his budget among the various components of the library. Furthermore, he has a blueprint of the various levels of activity within a division, so that he can choose if the need arises to eliminate certain programs, activity and personnel. Also, the method gives the librarian the opportunity of funding totally or part a new and high priority activity by reducing or eliminating altogether some current activities. The method identifies duplication of effort among the various divisions, which can result in elimination of consolidation of those duplications. Zero based budgeting also identifies those areas which are less effective. Once the decision packages have been identified, it is not necessary for additional inputs when changes are made in the expenditure levels during the budgeting year. Again, these changes need not to be reflected in complete rebudgeting when revisions are made in the assumptions during the budgeting year. Now, I am going to conclude the discussion. The method developed by Peter Fair during early 1970s requires thorough knowledge of the organization, lot of time, efforts and training. It emphasizes current activities and the necessity to justify each part of the program every year. Conceptually, the zero based budget is similar to planning, programming, budgeting system, but the only difference is that it does not take into account what happened in the past, but emphasizes on the current activities only. Every programs and activities of the library is described in detail, and then the financial requirements are worked out without any reference to the past. In other words, the request for financial support has to be put afresh every year without looking back to the previous year's expenditure or budget. The supporters of this method claim that it is better and superior to the conventional methods of budgeting, as it presents more readily understandable view of budgeting requirements of the activities and services of the libraries. However, it is only in recent years that some attention has been given to these modern methods. This is all for today's discussion. I hope the students have found it useful. We will meet again with a new topic. Till then, take care and goodbye.